Opening and closing a case study could be seen to be the most important parts of your consulting case interviews because it's vital to leave a good first and final impression with your interviewer. So in this video, I'll be taking you through 2 formulas that will help you open and close any case perfectly. Hi, my name's Henry. I'm an incoming BCG consultant, and here at the Consulting Axis, our mission is to help you align your future in consulting. So if that sounds good, then consider subscribing. But for now, let's get right into the video. So we'll start with opening the case, and I can split this into a 5-step process. So the first thing that will happen in the case part of your case interview is that your interviewer will explain the case to you, and whilst they're doing this, you'll need to be summarising what they're saying. Now, when I say summarising, I mean noting down the key bits of information. So things like client goals, key figures, market information, etc. Anything you think could be useful in solving the case. So some useful tips on getting better at summarising cases are: firstly, using abbreviations. Instead of writing "they want to increase their profits by 15%, which is quite lengthy and wordy, just write "want," capital P, upwards arrow, 15%. This will make everything a lot quicker, and the key thing here is to just write abbreviations that you can understand, because that's what's important. Secondly, write in bullet point form. Don't write in paragraphs of words, because when you want to filter through this information later, it'll be much better if it's a lot more ordered. And finally, practice. Just by doing case study practice, you'll get a lot better at summarising cases. Now, after they've explained the case to you and you've summarised it in note form, what you'll want to do is summarise the case back to them verbally. So just say something like, "Is it okay if I summarise the case back to you?" This will do 2 things. Firstly, it'll ensure that you haven't forgotten anything, because if you have, they might mention it. And secondly, just by saying it, you'll understand the case a lot better and it will really stick in your mind. So now thirdly, what you'll want to be doing is to ask clarifying questions if there's anything you don't understand or want more clarification on. And these questions shouldn't be too complex, they should be quite simple. So for example, you can ask them if the client has any particular goals, i.e. some profit target. Or for example, in a mergers and acquisitions case, you could ask them if they're focusing on merging or acquiring another business, if that wasn't already obvious. So the previous 3 points have been building your understanding of the case. So now that you understand the case, it's time to start solving it. So what you want to do now is to ask your interviewer for a minute just to help you structure your approach. If it's a more interviewee-led case, then this structure will be an overall guide to how you're going to be approaching the big question. However, if it's a more interviewer-led case, then this structure will be a guide about how you're going to solve the specific question they've probably just asked you. Now, I won't go into too much detail now about how you create these guides or frameworks as they're otherwise known, but you can check out some of my previous videos on this, which I'll link in the description. So most of the time, when you ask for a minute, they'll be like, "Of course, sure, go for it." However, in the unlikely event where they say no, don't panic. This just means they want a more conversational style interview. So what you'll need to do is, instead of just thinking in your head when you normally create a framework, just convert that to verbally and just explain what you're thinking. So now, onto our final step. So you've got a framework, but what you need to do now is to explain the framework to them. So let's go through a couple of tips on how to do this. Firstly, explain top down. Start with the overall question you're trying to solve and explain how you broke this down. Secondly, explain why. Don't just explain what you did, explain why you did it. And thirdly, use examples to back up your why points. So these could be examples or knowledge from the industry that you're working in, or it could be points from the summary of the case that you made earlier. So if you follow this process on opening a case, you'll do 2 things. Firstly, you'll be impressing your interviewer, which at the end of the day is what you want to be doing. And secondly, it will leave you in the best possible scenario to solve the case. So now let's fast forward through the case and you're coming to the end. Here you'll be expected to give a recommendation, i.e. what you think the client should do. And I know that may seem scary, but is there a correct answer? Not really. They don't really mind what your recommendation is. It is all about your reasoning why you think it's the correct answer. So just like opening the case, I can split closing the case into a 5-step process for you to follow. So firstly, the suggestion. What do you think the client should do to reach their goal? And for me, the most important thing here is to keep it short and very clear. Make sure to not overcomplicate it. We'll get onto the complex stuff later. So for example, if the question was, should this company merge with this business? The answer is yes or no. Secondly, reasons. Why do you think your suggestion is the correct suggestion? So let's go through some things that you should definitely include here. Firstly, your client's goals. Maybe in our merger example, the real goal of the client was to increase profits by 50%, so you need to explain why you think yes they can do this or no they can't. Secondly, make sure to include numbers and data when you can to back up your points. And finally, just use anything throughout the case, qualitative or quantitative, that will help you back up your points. So thirdly, after this, it's good to include risks, because nothing in business is 100% guaranteed to happen, so talking about the risks of your suggestion is really good. For example, in our merger example, maybe after this merger a lot of your employees might have to relocate, and potentially they might have families or kids, etc., and therefore they might leave the company as a result, so that is a risk of this merger. So next, I think it's really good to talk about potential scenarios, so let me explain what I mean by that. So a potential scenario is something that could happen in the world or a particular market that mean you might want to change or tweak your recommendation. So for example, let's say we were doing a market entry case study and our recommendation to the client is that they should enter the fast food market by opening a burger restaurant. So a potential scenario here is that food trends change and our customer base don't want unhealthy burgers anymore. So you would want to tweak your recommendation by making maybe a low-calorie burger or offering a salad bar, for example. Finally, I think it's really good to talk about further work. So what would you want to do next if you had more time? Because at the end of the day, a business problem normally takes longer than your 30-minute interview. So for example, in our merger case, you could actually link the risk back into this. So our risk was that maybe some employees might leave after the merger. So your further work could include surveying the employees to see how many would actually leave. Or in our market entry example, further work could include researching food trends to see if they would reach a certain level, and maybe if they did, you could actually come up with a plan to how you would deal with this. Now let's get you some practice in closing the case. Let's say our client is a steel manufacturing company that has seen a rise in demand and your suggestion to them was that they should open another factory. Let me know in the comments what risk can you see with this suggestion, and also what potential scenarios should they look out for. So I really hope you found this video useful. If you did, then consider subscribing. It's free and it really does help me out a lot. But for now, best of luck with your consulting case interviews.